Welcome to the channel. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Today I have yet another great value proposition from WatchDives in the form of a vintage sub diver. Now I understand a lot of us have totally gone off the sub cases and I was never really into them from the beginning. I find them quite bulky and quite simple, but if I had to choose one that I really liked, I much preferred the vintage shape, very similar to the one I have here. I prefer the features of this case over the modern one, and there aren't as many homages using this particular style compared to the more modern versions. So this is called the WD79090 and it comes in a total of 4 different dial options. You get 2 with the faux vintage loom and you get 2 with white loom markers, an Arabic dial or a maxi dial with date. I decided to pick the faux vintage loom but with the snowflake hands and the no date dial. You can get these watches from both the Aliexpress platform and the WatchDives site. Both are equally as good and you get decent discounts. In fact, when I bought this one from WatchDives website, I got £30 off the retail, which sits at around the £100 to £110 mark. Now, given the build quality and specifications, this is ridiculous. The value for money on offer as the years have gone on has increased dramatically with these Chinese brands. Now, WatchDives has used a high dome sapphire crystal with a crisply printed aluminium bezel insert to really give the watch its vintage flair. You get 200 meters of water resistance included with the screw down crown and the screw down case back. The movement powering this watch is a Seiko NH35 and irrespective of the dial configuration you go for, you will just get a ghost position for the dateless dials, which at this price point you can forgive them for not using the Seiko NH38. Now, even though this case is a 40mm like the modern version, it's 40mm at the bezel. But the case profile itself is visibly slimmer. It sits at around 38mm, which makes it look so different from the modern subs. You also get thinner lugs and a sharper, more defined look. The lug to lug is 47mm, complete with female end links, which will ensure a great fit on wrist. But with the choice of crystal used, it means you get a 14mm overall thickness, which is a bit thick in all honesty. And it also means that there is quite a bit of weight on the watch, especially towards the watch head. Overall, this watch weighs, with all the links intact, around 153 grams. The lug width is 20mm and the bracelet tapers down to 16mm towards the clasp, which is a double pusher fold over with milled internals and 5 micro adjustments, which is plenty. As I said earlier, the build quality on offer is insane on this watch, but it has come at the cost of giving us a very basic dial and a basic handset. Yes, it can be said it's a vintage homage, but they have upgraded and refined everything else. So it would have been nice to see a higher quality dial, given that it's the one place where you stay the most. The dial is a flat matte color, which is fine, but the printed loomed markers are also rather flat. We have seen high-end dials similar to this design on the 9 dial, for example, where you have thick block loom, which makes that dial a little more impressive. The handset also looks rather cheap. It is very basic, it's flat and polished, and it has even less loom applied than on the dial. There is also a slight color difference between the loom on the handset and the dial. This is also the same with the other dial variants. The maxi dial with the white markings is also rather flat with basic polished Mercedes hands. Now, in comparison to the rest of the watch, this is the area that lacks the most. This of course means the loom is also not the best it could have been. Given how well everything else is, the loom should have been nuclear. The loom is just about adequate, but there is a clear difference on the handset which fades out a lot quicker than the loom on the dial. Now, obviously it is a £100 watch, but with everything else at a very high standard, so the shortcoming of the dial does stand out just that little bit more. Now, aside from that, the bezel rotation is nice and crisp. It has really nice tactile rotation. I really like the design. I love the sloped scallops on the bezel edge, and this is one of the things I prefer on this vintage style. I also like the slightly exaggerated crown guards that pinch out to the side, giving a snug fit to the crown. Now, the grip and function of the crown is excellent. It engages really well and it's got very smooth threading. Case finishing is super smooth. You've got fine brushing all over with a consistent grain, and you've got a crisp tapered polished bevel which goes on either side, And I'm really glad they did brush the sides as opposed to the polished sides that you usually get. It helps keep the watch clean and it will hide a lot of the fine micro scratches. Now the only place where they could have done a bit better is the lug tips. They are noticeably sharp and they did need a bit of edge work. Now the bracelet also follows suit. I love the female end links. The bracelet is finished very finely with consistent brushing and highly polished sides. The slightly slimmer links and screw-in links give this bracelet a premium edge. The clasp features a very crisp WatchDives logo, fine brushing and a highly polished bevel edge with the same crisp transition. Now even down to the screws. Now when I resized, I noticed they are quite deep, which prevents slippage and damage, and the screw threads are buttery smooth. One thing to note though, there are two types of screws. You're unable to size from the bottom link closest to the clasp as it uses a thicker screw type with the threads at the bottom, but the link above uses a thinner screw with the threading at the head of the screw. Not sure why, but they must have a reason somewhere. Now on wrist, this watch wears surprisingly well. In hand it seemed a little top heavy, but it's very balanced on wrist. The female end links are just what you need, as the flat sub case feels much better seated and conforms to your wrist, and you don't feel the sharp lug tips, and the 47mm lug to lug is perfect for this 40mm case. Overall it does look and feel really impressive, and on the whole the dial being just a little bit out of touch with the rest of the watch isn't a deal breaker. You can definitely live with it. Well, that's it from me today. Let me know your thoughts below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I will leave a link to both the Aliexpress store and the WatchDives website. Feel free to support the channel and use those links. I'll see you on the next video. Thank you for watching.